Good afternoon, Rowan. It is Sunday afternoon. I am still in my swimsuit. Just got back from hanging out at a friend's pool for the afternoon, and I have some squash that need to get harvested. And so I wanted to take you along for that journey. I do have my harvest apron on, which also has my tie tape for the tomatoes, because I imagine there's probably some tomato tying that needs to happen. So even though I only have about 3 squash to harvest, I just wanted to put the apron on because we know how this works. I'm gonna get into more, but before I go inside, shower and change, and then do a little bit of work, I did not want to forget these squash, because if they go one more day, they're gonna be too big. So before we get to that, a few other things to talk about. You might notice this looks a little different over there, and that there are some large piles of brush over there. Let's talk about that. So I know that we texted about this a little bit, but just to fill you in, I did originally intend to film it, and then it just yesterday got away from us and I didn't get a chance. But we took the trees down. You can see the one stump right there. Yeah. I feel a little sad about it, but ultimately it was the right decision. But still, I really wanted to avoid cutting down a tree, but they were right here along the road, and they're really close to the road. So as they got bigger, the branches started hanging over and hitting cars that would drive by. And obviously once that started happening, we took the lower branches off. But there's so many trees around us that we're not really sure why they got planted there in the first place. There's 3 other big trees in the yard. So they weren't really doing much. They probably weren't going to get very much bigger just because of where they were planted and everything. And they were just putting too much shade on the end of the garden here. And I just think I could no longer ignore the fact that that was the problem with the ends of the beds and the things not growing. So it wasn't an easy decision to make. I did everything else I could before we got to that point. We tried taking just some of the lower leaves off, or the lower branches off, to see if that would open up enough sun for everything, and it's just not the case. Let me show you one thing here. You can really tell, like, this is the end of the bed that was in a lot of shade, as well as this one over here. And like, I still have seedlings. The plants are like, those nasturtiums should be way bigger. They just are kind of stunted. This is the corn, like right there on this end of the bed, and this is the corn on this end of the bed. So yeah, like I said, it just got to the point where I could no longer ignore the fact that those trees were casting too much shade. The trees up here that you see, they cast a lot of shade in the morning, and so I think between those trees and the trees that were there, it was just too much combined for the ends of the bed, because everything that wasn't in shade of those trees is doing great. So yeah, hitting a marigold here, don't blame me. But so that's that. We did it. It actually feels, the front yard actually feels way more open and really nice now. So that feels like a good feeling. But other than that, quick update. The tomatoes are doing great. The peppers are doing really well. And some of the okra are starting to get really big. These tomatoes up here, you can see, like, you know, this tomato that's on the end of the bed is twice the size as the tomatoes up there on the end of the bed. So once I could really see that kind of visual, things that are doing really well and not really well. But look at them, they're so big. Like I said, just couldn't ignore it anymore. So the trees are down. Hopefully the ends of the beds start to perk up and catch up. Obviously, cucumbers and beans and some of the stuff that I have planted there, pretty fast growing things. And I mean, everything that's planted there still has plenty of time to do that. But let's harvest some squash. Here we go. So you can actually see in here the video the other day where I was cross-pollinating. It didn't take. So this is what happens when fruits don't get pollinated. They die off. But I think just the male flower wasn't far enough along to pollinate those. But these ones are doing great. So there we go. These yellow crooknecks I like to take kind of small because this neck up here isn't going to get any wider, but this will just really bulge out. And I found last year that I liked them better small. So that is our first official harvest. I'm going to come back up towards the house here and get the other two. I looked at them before we left and I was like, oh gosh, the zucchini has got to get harvested today. Okay, actually, let me flip you around. Here's the other one. This is the Desi squash that I told you about the other day. Hoping hasn't been eaten. Put my scissors down and show you here. So these are like little round. They're really good at about baseball size, but they're still good when they get bigger too. Really like them. And then back in here, which might be easiest, I gotta move this eggplant. I think I'm gonna try and move it into one of the grow bags, so I don't really have anywhere else to put it. Look at that big old zucchini that like yesterday was half the size. Look at that. So exciting. But yeah, yesterday this was like half the size and I was like, ooh, that needs one more day. And then when I saw before we left, I was like, nope, that's got to come out today or it's gonna be too big tomorrow. So 3 squashes for our first harvest, which makes me so happy because the season feels real. I have harvested enough food to actually make a meal out of. Last year my first harvest was like a single squash and it felt kind of anticlimactic because I was like, oh, I can't even like I added it to a dish, you know, but it wasn't enough to warrant its own side dish. But it's here, we're harvesting, the tree is down, so hopefully the other ends of the bed will take off and I will have an update for you on that later. But for now, I'm going to go do some tomato maintenance and then I gotta catch up on some work, unfortunately. But thank you for joining me for my squash harvest and I hope you're having a lovely weekend.